Hello, this is Karen, and I'm back to tell another story. This particular story is a Yiddish folktale, and if you're not familiar with what Yiddish is, it is actually a language, a German dialect that was spoken by Jewish peoples that lived in Germany and Eastern Europe. This particular story is featured in a book by the author Eric Kimmel, and it is the story of onions and garlic. So there was a merchant, and he had three sons. His sons' names were Gedalia, Hananiah, and Getzel. Getzel was the youngest, and his father and brothers often called him Getzel the Fool. It wasn't that he was stupid. It's just that he was too kind-hearted and too trusting. And every time he tried to make a sale, he tried too hard to please the people buying. So often he ended up selling his merchandise for less than what it was worth. Getzel, his father would say, how could you be so stupid? You're never going to make any money as a merchant selling things for less than what they're worth. His brothers just shook their heads. Getzel did it again. Soon, Getzel's father would no longer let him go out and sell things. He put him in the office doing paperwork. Now, doing the paperwork is important, but Getzel longed to travel with his brothers, to go from land to land, across the sea and across land to different places. He wanted to see the world. He begged his father to let him go on a trip to try selling again. His father kept refusing. No, Getzel, it won't be worth it. Soon, Getzel just wore his dad down. And his father said, all right, I'll let you go, but I'm going to give you merchandise that's not worth a lot, so when you lose money on it, we won't have lost much. He gave Getzel a big sack of onions and sent him on his way on a ship. So here's Getzel with his sack of onions on this ship with other merchants, and they made fun of him. Farmers sell onions, merchants don't do that. And as they sailed from town to town, Getzel would try hard to sell his onions, but never managed to. Soon he was forced to eat some of them just to stay alive. Then one night, a storm blew up, and it lashed the decks of the ship, and soon the sails were ripped off, and then the mast collapsed, and then the crew cried out, "The ship is sinking! Everyone swim for your lives!" Getzel grabbed his sack of onions, and a big wave washed him overboard. Soon he was floating in the water as he watched the ship slowly sink under the surface. He clung to his bag of onions for a night and a day and another night before he came to the shore of an island. And he landed there, and he saw all over the ground on the shore, it sparkled. Surely not, Getzel thought, but he went and picked up some of the sparkly stones, and sure enough, they were diamonds. "Oh," said Getzel, "I'm going to save some of these because I'll probably need money just to get by, So he filled his pockets with the diamonds. And then he picked up his sack of onions and he went off in search of a town. Before too long, he came upon a town and discovered that the language they spoke there was not much different than what he was used to speaking. He asked where he could find a place to eat, and they directed him to an inn. Getzel went to the inn and asked the innkeeper, "Could I get some food?" Well, the innkeeper looked at him, and here he was. His clothes are all torn. His hair is a mess, and it's stiff with salt water. And the innkeeper says, "And just how do you intend to pay for this?" Well, Getzel said, "Well, with this," and he brings out the diamonds from his pockets. Said the innkeeper, "Diamonds aren't worth anything here. They're all over the ground. We don't even bother to pick them up anymore." Getzel says, "But I'm starving and I have no money and the ship was wrecked and this is all I have." So the innkeeper says, "Okay, I'm not going to let you go hungry. I will give you all the soup you can hold." So he took him in the inn and gave Getzel a bowl of soup. And Getzel began to eat. And he thought, "This is good. It's quite good soup, but it's certainly missing something." And he thought, and he said, I know exactly what this is missing." And he says to the innkeeper, "You know, I can teach you how to make this soup better. All you need to do is add onions." "Onions? What are onions?" "Oh, here, I have some here." And he pulls an onion out of his sack and he peels it and he cuts off a little piece and he gives it to the innkeeper. And the innkeeper takes it and he takes a taste and he says, "Oh, I've never tasted anything like this. Show me what to do with it." So Getzel went into the kitchen with him and showed him how to use onions in cooking. And when the innkeeper tasted the food Getzel had made, he said, "This is wonderful. We have to go tell the king." So they went to the palace, and the innkeeper says, "Your Majesty, this young man has brought us an amazing new vegetable. It's called an onion." "An onion? I've never heard of such a thing. What exactly is an onion?" So Getzel pulled out another onion and he peeled it and he gave it to the king. King took it and smelled it and took a little piece and ate it and said, "Well, this is very interesting. Um, can you teach my cooks how to use this?" And Getzel said, "Of course, of course." And they went into the kitchen and he showed the cooks different ways to use the onions in soups and stews and sauces. The king was very pleased and he said, "I will buy all the onions you have." And Getzel says, "That's wonderful. I can also teach you how to grow onions, because they're not difficult to grow at all." The king said, "This would be wonderful. I will give you whatever you want for these onions." And Getzel said, "I would just like a sack of diamonds." The king says, "Diamonds? Nobody wants diamonds." And Getzel says, "Yes, that's all I need." The king says, "Well, I'll give you a couple sacks of diamonds and a ship to take them home on." So that's what the king did. And soon Getzel was sailing back home to his father and brothers with 2 sacks of diamonds and a brand new ship. When he arrived home, his father and brothers were amazed to see him because they all thought he had died in the shipwreck. Then Getzel said, "Oh, but father, you'll be so proud of me because I sold that sack of onions and this is what I got for them." And he brings out the 2 sacks of diamonds. His father and brother were amazed. "You got diamonds for onions?" And he said, "Yes." They had never seen an onion before. They thought they were wonderful, and they bought all I had and said I could name my price. His brothers looked at each other and said, "Hey, if 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 onions went over so well and he got all these diamonds, what would happen if we sold them garlic?" So the brothers went out and they bought all the garlic they could, and they loaded up the ship that Getzel had, and they sailed back to the island where Getzel had gotten the diamonds. When they arrived there, they went straight to the palace and said, "Your Majesty, we heard how much you love onions, and we have brought you something even better." And they brought out the garlic. And the king says, "Well, what do you do with this?" And the brothers said, "We will show you." And they took the king into the kitchen with the chefs and made all sorts of dishes using the garlic. And the king said, "Oh, this is wonderful. This is amazing. I love this garlic." He says, "What do you want in exchange for the garlic?" And the brothers said, "Oh, well, we would be happy with a shipload of diamonds." And the king says, "Oh, these are worth more than diamonds. I can give you something much, much better." And the brothers looked at each other and they said, "What could be better?" "I don't know." And the king said, "You'll see." So soon the brothers were on their way back home on the ship, full of what the king said was better than diamonds. When they got home, their father said, "Well, did you get the diamonds? Did the king pay you a lot?" And the brothers said, "Well, yes, he gave us a lot for the garlic." And the father said, "Was it diamonds?" "No, not diamonds." "Rubies? Sapphires? Pearls?" "No, not exactly." And they opened up the hold of the ship and let the father look in. And the hold of the ship was filled with onions. And that's the end of that story. I'll be back again with another story for you to listen to soon. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.